Go ahead,
Cool.
Chris.
Yeah, so we are super excited walking you through variables. It's been a long time coming. Been working hard on the development of it. So just as Chuck was saying, definitely looking for feedback on this. You can solve a lot of different use cases with variables. Provides a lot of flexibility as Matt will go through. So definitely would love to hear some of the use cases that you were able to solve with variables. We'll go through some of those in your instance, and would love to hear about some of those specific use cases that you were able to solve and how you intend to roll it out in your instance. So please share some of those items and feedback. And then we're here to help out with any type of, from the creation process to implementation along the way, whatever it takes to help you be successful in that. So just wanted to communicate those items, and we'll turn it over to you, Matt, to go through it.
Sweet. So variables, we're super excited about variables. Really, the value that variables brings as a feature is it allows our users to bring these dynamic and flexible app-like capabilities to your Domo visualizations and dashboards. Just allowing viewers of dashboards and users to interact with different controls on a dashboard to directly interact with the data and the visualizations being shown. So you can do some really cool things using variables. Some different use cases here that are possible with variables. And we'll dive into some of these different examples in more depth in my demo in a sec here. We can do what if analysis. So looking at inventory forecasts, adjusting a mortgage rate, margin impact. So being able to slide something on your dashboard to say, what would my data look like if I updated the inventory to look like this, or our mortgage rate, adjust it from 7% to 8%, and watch as different cards update to reflect that new value. And then dynamic analytical views. So being able to switch out dimensions or metric columns in your chart. So you can have a chart, just one visualization, and have a couple of different controls, like in this example here, where you can swap out from region to brand to category and have one or multiple charts update to reflect that new dimension or metric. You can do time comparison analysis, so being able to slice up one card and have custom time comparison options, which we'll go into in a sec here. And then guided analysis, so being able to modify different control inputs and with the user selection like we talked about. And the last one here, global variables. So variables are global. Users can create them and use variables across different data sets within the instance. So you can see different variables that have been created and then use those across different data sets on your instance. So it makes it really easy to browse different variables instead of having to recreate one every time, and use that control on your card or dashboard. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and jump into a demo here. We'll walk through some different use cases of variables, as well as the creation of variables. So here's a quick dashboard that we've set up to help show off different use cases for variables and show the value that this new feature brings and adds. So in this dashboard here, we can see different margin percent. And this is a what if analysis example. So across the top here, we have a couple different vendors. We have CJ, Nikki, and Kelly, and the different margin percentages that those vendors have. And here we have a chart showing those same vendors by product category. So here's a couple different variable controls that we've created here on the left. This top one here is our margin percent goal. So you can see we have this purple line here, which is our percent goal in the visualization. Right now it's set to 35%. So using this variable control, we're able to directly update this. I can change it to, let's say it's 45%. We can watch as that purple line updates to show the new goal in our visualization. Here we have advertising percent off. So right now our discount is set to 5%. These 3 single value cards, as well as the visualization here, this chart, are all using a beast mode that contains this variable here. So you watch as when I change this from 5% discount to a 15% discount, you can watch as multiple cards on my dashboard update to reflect that new value. So obviously, if you're giving a bigger discount, the margin percent is going to go down, and we're going to go a little bit lower than that 45% goal. We have drop-down variable controls. You can change this to 15%, and these sliders are only affecting the individual vendor. So you can see this CJ vendor. When I update this, only the orange bar will update. So I'll just go ahead and jump into how we create a variable and what that process looks like. So I've opened up that same card we were looking at, the vendor margin card. To create a new variable, I would go to this add calculated field option here, which will pull up the beast mode editor. And as you might have noticed, we have sort of redesigned the beast mode editor a bit, given it a new look and feel so that we can better accommodate variables in this new process. So across the left side here, you can see your different columns on your data set, different variables that have been created in your instance. So all the numeric variables and strings, as well as your functions like you're used to in the regular beast mode editor. Across the top here, you can have different tabs. So I can create another beast mode calculated field tab, as well as another variable. So to create a variable, I would come to this add new, click variable. So for this example, we'll think of something simple like estimated tax rate. I can add a description here if you'd like. I'll go ahead and create a number, and we'll do 25, and then I can add a control type. So for the default control, I will add a input slider. Let's say the minimum is 5 and the max is 35. And I would like that to be a percentage. You also have the option of currency or default. So I'll change that to percent. And we want that to jump around by 1% at a time. So here we have a preview of what that variable control would look like. And like you may have seen, you can choose either a text data type or a numeric. We have date variable type on the way for a future release, but right now with this beta, we're including text and numeric. So I would go ahead and create the variable down here at the bottom right, and you can see this toaster pop up, variable created. And now that I've created that variable, I'm able to use that variable in a beast mode. And so this is where you'll actually get the value out of variables, is adding them to your beast mode. So if I wanted to make a beast mode here, we'll just call it beast mode tax rate. I can now use that variable like I would any other column in my data set. I can use that variable in my beast mode. So this is obviously a very simple beast mode. It's just using the tax rate. I could do ×2 or something. And now anytime I update the slider, anywhere that is using this beast mode will update to reflect the new variable value. So you can see once I've created the variable, it'll create this variable control down here at the bottom. And as I update that, it would update the beast mode. Right now, we're not using this beast mode, so nothing would change. But to show sort of what this margin percent goal looks like, we have a beast mode that's simply using the margin percent goal variable here on the right. And now we're using that on our y-axis. And so you can see if I change this from 55% to 35%, like we did before, that's what allows this to update. So the variable value is being updated, and then changing the beast mode value here to then update in the card. So that is how you would create a variable and a variable control.
Hey, Matt.
And then, yeah.
Hey, Matt, you want to go back to the beast mode editor? Just want to call out a few things that other people have called out. So one, the variable names are unique on the instance. So if you try to add a new variable and it's a duplicate, you'll see a banner that comes up that says name already exists. So the names are unique. And then two, we made changes on the, yeah, there you go. Cool. And then if you go back to the other tab, the beast mode, so you'll see this create tab here. So you create the variable, you create the beast mode, and then if you ever you go back to edit a beast mode, it'll say update beast mode. So we did change some of that terminology. So you're not actually saving the beast mode until the card is saved. To help out with that, so the button's on the bottom right, and then you close out of it on the top right. We'll probably be adding some more changes in the future. So some of those decisions were based there, but just want to let you know of those changes to the beast mode editor too.
Yep. And like Chris said, that's to help with the confusion. Before we used the word save beast mode, and this caused a little bit of confusion because you're not actually able to save the beast mode. The beast mode isn't actually being saved until the card is saved. So to help with that confusion, we updated the terminology. But yeah, definitely, please let us know if you have any feedback on your experience with that. Let us know thoughts on that change. So continuing on here, variables, you can use them, here we have an example using them in a table, and variables will be available in story presentation mode, which is another feature that will be released. It's currently in beta and will be released in the fall. So variables will be able to be used in this control rail and story presentation mode as well. So here is another example. Here's an example of where we can dynamically switch out different dimensions and metrics. In this example, we see a visualization. Right now it's sales by city. So you can see the different sales by each city. We have Salt Lake City, LA. And then here we have a few different variable controls where you're able to switch out those dimensions. So right now it's using the metric sales. We could switch that out to units. And now it's units by city. And you may have noticed that in this card title, this is using variable smart text, which is actually not going to be available immediately with variables, but will be released shortly here in July. So you're able to use that variable value in your card title and descriptions or notebook cards, like anywhere else you'd be able to use smart text. So here we have units by city. We could switch that to be units by region and watch as the different cards update to reflect region now instead of city. So this is really powerful and allows you to both consolidate cards instead of having to create a different combination of all these. You might have to have a different combination of each of these. A single card on your dashboard have 10 different cards here. It allows you to consolidate your cards and have a very simple experience for your users, but then also allow anyone viewing this dashboard to then explore the data. So as we're looking at units by region, that might spark another question, or might spark some interest in looking at, well, that's interesting, let's look at it by city. And so it just allows you to sort of really dive into your data and cards using variables. Here we have a time comparison example. This one right now, we have the same category. This is our dimension that we're using right now. It's by region, so we see the different regions. And then we're looking at sales year to date, year over year. So this is this year versus year to date versus last year, year to date. So you can see that right now. But then using variables, we're able to then switch out those time comparisons to be something different. So right now we're looking at year to date, but now I can change this to be quarter to date and watch as my card updates to reflect quarter to date, year over year. But maybe I want to look at, instead of this quarter versus the same quarter last year, I want to look at period over period, this quarter versus last quarter, Q1 versus Q4 or Q2 versus Q1. So this is really cool. This is a really exciting part of variables, allowing you to create custom time comparisons and be able to swap those out on the fly from a dashboard. And we have another example here using a pivot table. So right now we're looking at sales by brand, and then we're able to add these two different groups in our pivot table to then slice and dice the data even further. So right now we're looking at sales by brand, but then sliced by region is our group one. So I could swap this out to state and watch as the group one updates to state here. Or right now they're both state. So we could do state by category. And you can have the ability to really swap out the pivot table and add new groups to group by your data on the fly from the dashboard. To add a variable control, you would come here to edit dashboard, and I'll just remove this one right now and we can add it right back. So you would see I would drag this control type here into my dashboard. I already have that one there, so I'll leave that. So I could add a new control, and this will give me a list of any variables that are being used on cards on this dashboard. So we see this Nikki and vendor inflation like was there before. I could select this and it will add that variable control to my dashboard. And from here, I'm able to then edit the control directly from the dashboard if I want some further customizations for this dashboard.
And Matt, can you explain here, like, just that this control is unique?
Yeah. So the way this works is right now when you create a default variable control from this page, when I create a default variable control like this margin percent goal input, this is the default control that's used for this variable. It's actually optional to have a control type. There are different use cases where we've seen where there's value in just being able to create a variable value where you can update it to one place and it will update everywhere. So when I create this default control, it will add it to my card. Now, if I change the default control from the card right here and hit save, it's going to modify both the default control for the future. So if another user tries to use this variable and adds this variable control to Analyzer using this button, then they will get the default control type. Now, if they modify the control type from here, it essentially overrides the default, and now they're on their own. That control is now unique. So if I updated this margin percent goal, I think in the default type it was input slider. If I updated the text box input, then now this is a unique override control, and the same applies to a dashboard. So if I edit anything here from the dashboard, if I change this, for example, from input slider to just a slider, that change will only be reflected here on this dashboard. And it's not going to go back and change every control type that's being used by other users or on other cards. So that just prevents any unwanted changes from being saved, but allows you to have some further customization for this dashboard specifically.
Yeah. And when you update the control template, it won't override this dashboard control changes.
Yeah. Once you've added a control to the dashboard, it's its own unique instance of that control. So changing it here, like Chris mentioned, if I make any updates here and change this to just a slider, that's not going to then update the controls for everywhere that's using this variable control. So that is sort of those are sort of the big use cases for variables, and trying to break it down by different examples where you can use a variable. Obviously, there's tons of different ways where you could get really creative to find a different use case where you could use a variable. We're excited to see what our beta customers and what future customers come up with and how they come up with different creative examples of where to use variables and how that adds value to your dashboards. Yeah,
Matt, let's two other things. One, page filter views or page filters. Okay. So how that works is variables are applied when you come to a dashboard. So by default, they won't be shown in the ribbon, but whenever you modify or a user changes the default value, then they will show up in the filter bar. And then you can change them from the filter bar if you want, or you can change them from the dashboard control. You want to just show them real fast, Matt, click on that, just one of them.
Yeah.
So you can change it there, and then, or you can change it out of control. And then the other one is just, you want to show them the case statement so they know how they could switch out dimensions and measures.
Oh, yes, that's useful. Let me pull up this card type here. So in this example, this was the example where I'll actually show it here, where we're switching out the different dimensions and metrics. In order to do that, we've created two different beast modes. So we're using this beast mode called beast mode choose dimension, which is right here. Now this beast mode, we've created a case statement that uses this choose dimension variable. So I'll open up that variable as well so we can look at what that looks like. Choose dimension. So we've created the choose dimension variable. It's a text type. The default value is brand. We've added these available values: region, state, city, brand, category, department, and it's a dropdown. So we're using this variable inside our beast mode choose dimension case statement here. So we're saying when choose dimension, the variable choose dimension, the value of that is equal to region, then use the region column. So this is just going to use the region column from our data set and use it inside the x-axis here for our chart. So anytime, right now this is defaulted to brand. So this card is using brand, the column brand in the x-axis, but I could update that to then be region. And now our x-axis is using region. And then the same applies for beast mode metric. But with this one, we've added a little bit more logic. So we have a variable called choose metric. And so we're saying when choose metric is equal to sales, when they select that and the value is now sales, then sum the total sales. And then you could apply different logic for other things like units, order, quantity, etc. So you're just going to add some different logic there for what the aggregate value should be for that metric. And then it will use this value when showing the card in our y-axis here. So right now, if it's on sales, it's just looking at the sum of total sales by brand right now, or excuse me, region. So that's sort of how you would set up the swapping dimensions or metrics on your card. You would need to use the variable inside of a case statement in your beast mode to then be able to swap out the dimensions or metrics.